You're listening to On the Moans, where we have conversations about hormones, midlife, and the moments that make us wonder, is it just me? I'm Kate. I'm a 48-year-old pharmacist and newly minted perimenopausal oversharer. This is where we talk openly about the changes we aren't prepared for, so we never have to feel alone in them again. I acknowledge the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land which I am recording today. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Hello friends, my guest is the wonderful Georgina Whelan from Sexual Psychology, and this conversation was fascinating. Georgina started her career as a mental health nurse before moving into psychology and sex therapy. And she brings this really grounded, practical approach to conversations that a lot of people still find awkward, shameful, or difficult to have. In this first half of the conversation, we talk about what libido actually is and what it isn't. We talk about low libido, mismatched libido, and sexual desire discrepancy, and a fact about men and women that surprised me. We also get into the sexual scripts that men and women grow up with, why men can also be victims of the patriarchy when it comes to sex and intimacy, and some of the real-life libido killers that don't get talked about enough. Things like painful sex, resentment, mental load, and yes, the ick. Georgina also explains the desire and arousal scale, why couples are often mismatched on it without even realizing, and how to actually start talking to your partner about sex without it turning into blame, shame, or defensiveness. Honestly, this conversation was so refreshing. I hope you find it so too. Here's the first half of my chat with Georgina Whelan from Sexual Psychology. Hi, George.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is very, very exciting. George and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and George has a history in clinical psychology. But how on earth did you get from clinical psychology into sexology? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, there's no direct pathway. You have to kind of forge that yourself, like all sexual minority adventures.
Yeah.
I was a mental health nurse, and then I retrained as a psychologist. And while I was retraining as a psychologist, I then also worked in sexual health as a nurse in Coach and Road Sydney Hospital, so sexual health and drug and alcohol. And then I did my internship there. So I had that sexual health, mental health experience. And then when I finished my internship, I did a Masters of Sexual Health. It was the first year it was ever run in Sydney with Sydney University. And after I finished that, I then worked specifically in a sexual health clinic called the Australian Centre for Sexual Health with Chris McMahon. That was his practice. He's like a world leader in sexual medicine, particularly for men. So then I just sort of did that specifically, and then I brought it into my own private practice. So my clinical experience really focuses less on the, sexual spicy things, but more the intersection of people's relationships, mental health conditions, sexuality, gender, and sexual function.
Yeah, amazing. So what actually is libido?
I think a lot of people think about it in a really specific way, like related to sexual desire, so wanting. But I actually think about libido as more like an energy life force. Carl Jung first talked about libido as being like this energy that we have and carry around. So it's about vitality, motivation, drive, wanting, pursuing. So we can do that in all areas of life. And we certainly have libido within sex, which is wanting sex, seeking it out.
I had a conversation with a lady who was a little bit older, and she was telling me about a friend of hers who had started HRT and was wanting to, so this lady was in her early 80s, I think, and she was wanting to continue her hormone replacement therapy because she said, it gives me a libido and a sex drive, and I live on my own, so I'm driving nowhere, but it is a libido for myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a bloody brilliant way of stating it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a lot of people self-regulate through sex, so masturbation. So having a desire to masturbate is one thing, and then also hormones help you with your ability to have arousal, so that is to experience pleasure and then orgasm. So you got to want to masturbate, and then the hormones to help you get aroused. And orgasms are very calming to the nervous system. Yeah.
And also hormones make you feel like yourself again. So they can take away all those, I guess, symptoms of when we're having hormonal fluctuations or hormonal, in perimenopause, menopause, the loss of the hormones, and then we don't feel like ourselves. And of course, all of that would feed into then how much you want to do anything, let alone like how much you want to engage in the world. And then, of course, sex and your relationship. What I was going to ask you was then why in 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s do women feel like their libido is gone or it's less than it was in our 20s?
I don't see that many women with libido problems in their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
They might be having children, so they might have a postpartum kind of dip because children are a massive contraceptive.
Yes.
And in that period of postpartum, we have very different hormones. Like, so if some people get really horny when they're pregnant and then afterwards they don't. Also, when you've got a baby on you, the oxytocin is basically managed by the fact that you've got another human crawling all over you. So you often don't want to have sex, and breastfeeding doesn't want to have sex. But other than the childbirthing experiences and the few years of the young children after that, you see more persistent low libido in women in their 40s and 50s, and particularly 50s on. So that coincides with perimenopause and menopause, but it also coincides with different relationship cycles. So not that many people are falling in love at 40 and 50. They might be divorcing, actually. That's the time where divorce is the highest in Australia, 49 to 50
Is
in
that
women.
right?
Yeah. The relationship cycle really depends on where your desire is. So early relationship limerence has novelty, fantasy, projected idealization, and your whole chemistry is designed for attaching, like to connect. So you're seeking out, and then you're nervous about getting rejected. So that kind of anticipation. Pheromones, our chemistry basically fully changes, and so our desire will go up in that first phase. Bonding has it slightly sort of settling down into a little bit more like ourselves, and then into the third phase where we're learning to have attachment but differentiation. Our libido will go back to our normal set. And so that's where we can have problems within relationships with desire discrepancy. So we initially rise at the beginning of the relationship, and then we settle down to our general personal libido. Often you're seeing in your 20s people like falling in love a lot of times, and then when they fall out of love, right, or they find they're not compatible, they'll move on. So they're constantly getting new activations of desire there. Whereas for women in their later 30s and onwards, they're actually in longer term relationships. So that is part of the reason why you've got that clash of low desire alongside menopause and then alongside major life changes. So we've started a family, we've moved jobs, we've moved states, countries, and in those later relationships cycles, we've also got power struggles. And so when you get into a power struggle over sex, who wants sex more, who wants sex less, that really kills desire when you're arguing about it. Yeah.
So when you say discrepancy, why then is it that I'm going to probably generalize, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but is it mainly the women who have a lower libido or desire? Why is it then that the men seem not to? Is it purely just hormones?
Well, it's a myth that it's all about men wanting to have more sex than women. So in cis heterosexual relationships, you will see about desire discrepancy. That's when one person wants significantly more sex than the other, and one wants significantly less. In heterosexual cis relationships, that's about 60% men, but 40% women actually want sex more than their male partners, but we don't talk about that.
No, I would not have guessed that at all. I'd have put it, 90, 10. I don't know. I'd have put that gap a lot more in favor of the men.
Well, it matches our cultural myths, right? So all men are supposed to be horny as hell, have an erection at any moment of their of their life, want to fuck anybody that walks past them that has a vagina. And so that's the myth, which is it's just actually sad for men. Like it's very a constricted myth that they should be on all the time. So men are embarrassed to say, my wife wants to have more sex than me. So that's why you don't hear it there. Men are also used to being told no. So like early gatekeepers of sex historically are women. And so men learn to initiate, and it's a numbers game. It's okay to be rejected. Women hate it. Like if when I see a desire discrepancy couple, it's distressing for all couples. But for women, when they're being rejected by their man, they find it incredibly difficult because they've never learned they have to to have rejection, because generally you can have sex if you want to as a woman. Go and find it. Yeah, but it's actually very common for women to want sex more than men. Yeah.
And do you see then, you said heterosexual couples, what is the difference then in homosexual couples?
Well, in same-sex males, they have more open, flexible relationships. Sometimes they're polyamorous, but mostly it's a hookup culture. So when the libido dies or reduces from the limerence into the bonding, into the differentiation stage, men who stay in relationships have a lot more flexible understanding that they can just go and hook up. So it's a transactional experience. It's easily available. You can have sex anytime you want. So men in same-sex relationships tend to negotiate that by bringing other people in, and women in same-sex relationships don't have that same hookup couple. And there's like myths around lesbian bed death, which is this idea. There's a book written about it. This idea that you move into that attachment, but kind of almost over-identification phase. And if you've got two people with responsive desire in that respect and no one's initiating, that can lead to less sexual frequency. Not to say that lesbians, there aren't women in relationships that initiate sex and have high sexual desire, but women in longer-term relationships move more into a responsive sexual experience. And then for non-binary, gender-diverse people, it's really very different, and it depends on where they are in their gender affirmation and hormone state and things like that.
And I've heard you say previously that sex and sexual relationships for women can be emotional and for men it can be just physical. Do you think that's then also feeding into why, if there's a discrepancy in a relationship, the woman feels really hurt by it, but the men not so much?
No, I don't really believe that for men sex is physical and for women it's emotional. And in fact, biology doesn't show that. So biology shows that oxytocin release, which is a bonding, loving hormone for us humans, is actually higher in men when they ejaculate than it is in women when they orgasm. So the highest oxytocin that a woman will have is when she's breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Men come in with their ejaculation, women come in with their orgasm, and then we get oxytocin release through physical touch, like kissing or just even holding hands, and you don't have, like, even friendship hugs and things like that. But men actually fall in love through sex, and I think it's a real disservice to talk about men just being like fuckboys and things like that, because they're the same. They're experiencing the same problems in patriarchy as women are, which is locked into there's the sexual script of that's how you're supposed to have sex. But yeah, a lot of men in sexual desire discrepancy feel very rejected if their partner doesn't want to have sex, and they often can communicate their emotional feelings through sex in a way that women can actually be a little bit more diverse. So we've got slightly different brains in regards to communication style, and like forward-facing eye-to-eye contact rather than side-to-side. And we also can get a lot of intimacy through our friendship groups.
Yeah.
Not to say that men don't do that, but we're socialized to really develop be the manager of social groups, women. So women can get intimacy in a variety of ways, and then men can get it maybe in a less scripted kind of way. Yeah. So I actually believe, that everyone can have transactional sex and fuck, but men do actually express their emotions a lot more in sex than women.
So what would you say? I know you've just said that children are a libido killer. What else in your clinic do you think are people saying that kills their libido?
Oh, right. Yeah. So there's lifestyle factors, probably the biggest thing. Just people not understanding that their body has to be in a happy place. So people don't really want to have sex when their body is unhappy. Yeah. When you're moving into your later stage relationships, if you've got children or social commitments, family commitments, we tend to put sex and our bodies kind of right at the bottom of the priority.
Yeah.
And women do tend to feel like they're focusing on other people's needs as part of their roles. So one of the things is, just neglect of feeling good in the self. So accessing that general energy and vitality. And one of the other things that I think is probably like you just have to stop, which is painful sex.
Yeah.
So some women continue on with painful sex regardless because they feel like that they're doing that for the relationship or they're doing it to manage their men's emotions. So back to the point of emotions and sex for men, their partner might sulk or get frustrated or withdraw. So they're doing that to kind of placate there. And so they'll go through intercourse that's painful. Which is terrible because that teaches the body that their partner is dangerous. So the body doesn't matter what your mind says, I'm doing this for us or it will be quick. The body will remember that and then build an anticipatory aversion to that. So, sex that's painful, sex that is one way, which is like I don't really feel like it, but I'll do it for you. That's everyone like giving your partner a solid like that is great sometimes. But if you're turning up in a sexual experience and not getting something out of it that you enjoy, you don't have to have an orgasm every time, but you really have to leave thinking not more like I did that for you and that's for our relationship, but what did I get out of that? So sex is actually selfish. So in the moment we're orgasming, we're thinking about our own fantasy, what it feels like in our body, whatever the smells or the vision or whatever it is that's really getting us going. It's actually very self-referential, and good sex involves selfishness as well as turn taking, sometimes mutual satisfaction. But often women feel bad about just doing that solitary, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Really kind of laying back as a doomy queen, kind of like, bring it all on. Yeah. So I think that when you're turning up for sex and it's a gift or quick, I've got to get something else done. And I've got nothing against quickies, they're good too. But just this idea of making sure that you don't neglect yourself. Yeah.
Being selfish in sex.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did everybody hear that? That's the takeaway message for the entire podcast, I think. Be selfish in sex.
Yes. Well, it happens to men and women, all genders, is that this idea that men get like, oh, well, if I'm being selfish in sex, that's when they get really worried about premature ejaculation and but then women will feel like they can't be selfish. Oh, I'm taking too long, or I haven't bothered to shave, or maybe I haven't had a shower or something. So that my smells or the way like I'm a bit furry or something, that's going to upset my partner. But like actually, my guys don't care about that. They really don't. They generally like smells. And women can be very hypervigilant about like their bodies. Yeah, so that part where you just be like, oh, I'm accepting myself as I am and I'm going to take the pleasure as it's given to me. I don't have to be in some perfect frame of mind or perfect body shape.
Yeah. I think my husband has definitely said, I mean, my son as well, when I'm shaving my legs or plucking my eyebrows or dyeing my eyelashes or, whatever other ridiculous thing it is I'm doing, both of them have said, I don't know why you're doing that. And my daughter gets it. But interesting that, I mean, I can understand why my husband would say it because we've been together for 25 years. But interesting that even my 21-year-old son is saying, I don't know why you're bothering to do that, Mum. So
he doesn't mind you having hairy legs.
Well, no, but also I think he's I really think he's just saying to me, people are fine as they are.
Yeah.
But you have mentioned the ick before. Tell me about that.
Well, the ick is when you're participating in sex with like really low desire. So if you think about a spectrum, like from 0 to 100, you've got desiring, which is wanting, going up from 0 to 100, and you've also got arousal, which is your vasodilation in your clitoris and your vulva, in a labia. So that swelling, engorgement, lubrication. Right. So arousal going from 0 to 100 and 100 being orgasm. So when you're starting sex with no arousal, that's okay. That's fine. A lot of women will start with that, and 0 desire. What can happen is that because women feel like, oh, I've got to get this over and done with, and men might be starting, if they've got a desire discrepancy, they might be starting at a 50 or something like that already. They could start at a 30. They haven't got an erection. They're just getting one. They're moving up to a 50. So think that 0 to their desires are different. So she's 0 in desire. He's maybe even 60 in desire, but he's already 50 in arousal, and she's 0 in arousal. He's ready to do a high arousal activity like intercourse, right? So best to wait till you're about an 80% aroused to do a intercourse. So it's not going to take him very long to get more aroused to be ready for intercourse. She's starting at 0 arousal, 0 desire. So if she's touched in a way that she likes, she will start to get aroused. So she might move into like a 20, 30. I love the way you're touching the back of my neck, or kissing me that way. Or my personal favorite from moving from a 0 to a 30 is a foot massage.
Oh, yeah.
Just fully relaxed. And from that, moving up into that slight arousal there, then you start wanting. Women will then like, oh, now I want to continue. So then their desire will catch up, and then their arousal and their desire start moving. I keep wanting more, and I'm enjoying it more and moving up. But that lag between where your partner starts and where you start is really important for pacing. So if you start with a 0, then jump straight into a high sexual activity, which is, oh, I know if I just give you a head job, that'll get things done. Or even if your partner went down on you to get you there, it's really like, it's kind of like trying to drag you up faster than your body's ready. So what happens is that it becomes a turn off. So your partner that in that moment could be touching you like a sexual magician, right? They're like the best lover in the world. They're doing all the right things. They're doing the things that made you like tremble and scream in the previous time, but they're touching you in the same way, and you'll be like, oh, it feels intrusive. So if you do any kind of sexual touching on the breasts or the genitals, or really like tongue down your neck kissing, or like deep in your ear or something up your ass, when you're down there, you just go into minus category.
Yeah.
So when you're in 0 desire, 0 arousal, and you do a high sexual arousal activity, women will feel irritated, like it's intrusive, like it's a boundary violation. They can get irritable, and then they can go into disgust. That's disgusting, right? And then that's really bad for their partner, because if she's irritable, she'll be like, don't touch me like that. No, no, no.
Yeah.
So it's not about what could bring me up, like, please give me a foot massage. It's sort of like, not that way, not that way, not that way. And then he's going to be all anxious about, oh, I'm doing it wrong. So falling into the male myth of he's got to somehow secretly work out what she wants without her saying. And then if he just misses all that, or is just all a bit ashamed and he's got his head down just trying to, like, if we can just get over this hump, right? Get over the hump, and then we'll both be all right. Then it'll move into the ick. Yeah, so you get this disgust. And so unfortunately then the disgust can then be transferred onto the partner. I like, you're disgusting. And then that's really painful for partners to have when someone's in a low desire space, that when they're touched be rejected, but then felt like their sexuality is disgusting. And then because that is such a big feeling, there's a lot of shame around it. So women will they're ashamed that they feel that way in the first place. They'll be like, I don't want to say that's disgusting, but I feel disgusted. So they'll like kind of squash it down, or then it'll be just too intrusive for them, and they'll get that irritable disgust, and then the guy will feel really ashamed. And so then you've got this shame sitting in sex, which is unless you've got a humiliation fetish, shame generally is not great for couple sexuality. So, then that further entrenches that low desire. So then unfortunately, then it broadens out into your general affection. So you've got your partner again floating around with desire around a 40 or a 30 comes past, rubs your leg, grabs your bum, because they're just like feeling great, and then you're still zero. But the last time you had sex, did anything sexual, you went into ick zone. So then general touching and flirty touching becomes icky too. And so then the general affection goes away. And so then that really reinforces that desire discrepancy. So because how do you start?
That was going to be my next question, which is how do you start then?
Yeah, but you can't, because it's like a functional, well, we haven't had sex in 3 months. Let's do it. And then it's so awkward, right?
Yeah.
And then people think, well, it's awkward. It shouldn't be awkward. There must be something wrong with the relationship. But no, you can have really great relationship and get stuck in these patterns of sex. But the belief that sex should be spontaneous, it should be easy, I shouldn't have to say anything about it, my partner should read my mind.
Oh, no.
And the comparison of like how it used to be. Like, so I've turned up, we had bad sex. That's pretty normal in a long-term relationship. But if this idea of bad sex, we carry the emotional feeling that we leave with. So we've got, the sex response cycle of the, of wanting and pleasure and orgasm and then completion. In that completion phase, we really remember the feeling. So if we've ended on a bad note, we've got that feeling in ourselves, then we go to sex, we bring that with us. We've got to get over that feeling to start, which is where we get the ick, and then we don't, because we haven't really recognized it very much. And then we think, people think, must be something wrong, right? And then if they're really good, it's a really good relationship, what will happen is it'll be like, we love each other and we get on so well when we're doing X, Y, Z together, but as soon as we have sex, it's weird.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, well, why would doing that sex makes us feel weird and awkward, so we'll just avoid it.
Yeah.
And so then it's easier to sit on the lounge, or it's easier just to go out, watch a movie, or it's easy to play parents and kids, and because we get on so well there. And that's just a natural human thing, which is we go towards the things that we like,
of course,
and we stay away from the things that feel awkward, shameful, and disgusting.
And that's where we'll leave part 1 of my conversation with Georgina Whelan from Sexual Psychology. In the next episode, we get even more practical. We talk about how to talk to your kids about sex without dying of embarrassment, sex toys, and how to actually choose one if you've never bought one before, how to introduce one into a relationship without making your partner feel threatened, and Georgina introduces me to the concept of bread and butter sex, which honestly I think a lot of long-term couples will really relate to. So if you've ever wondered whether your relationship is normal, whether everyone else is secretly having better sex than you, or how people actually keep intimacy alive over decades, part 2 is for you. I'll see you next time we get on the moans. Bye-bye.